All right. So today we speak with my buddy Josh X. He is the founder of While You're Sleeping. He's a multifaceted creative, a director of photography, and content creator. His work in the music industry and with artists as a manager and artist development, and his keen eye gives him a unique and creative edge. We're excited to have you on. Welcome, Josh, to the Activate Your Audience podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Pleasure, brother. So we'll roll right into it as always. Let's start maybe with a little bit of your background. Did you start in photography? How did you find yourself founding and working on While You Sleep? What is the story behind that? And yeah, what was your origin story, I guess, within your craft?
Right. Origin story is always been creative, always really just enjoyed music. And originally I had a blue collar construction background and I had a friend one day that was just taking photos, really loved what he did and asked him to teach me. And he ended up teaching me photography. So that's what I started in, taking photos for about 9 years now. And through that and just the internet age, everybody kind of just on the internet, I went to YouTube University and just started learning about video. And I completely learned how to use Adobe and just the settings and what kind of gear and all that kind of stuff. So photo and video is my base. So
nice. I love that. And what would you say has been maybe some of your favorite projects so far? And what do you think makes your, say, ideal structure for a shoot or a campaign with the work that you're working on recently?
Some of my favorite shoots, I'll probably start with, I've been doing the While You're Sleeping full time for about 4 years now. So one of the first bigger projects I did, I worked with a rapper out of Philly named Maddox, and really, really young kid, but extremely talented. He was signed with Motown. So that was the first time I had worked with a major label, and I was doing his media content. So everywhere he went, I went. And it was just a really good learning experience to kind of just really see the power of the internet, the power of his influence, and just learned how the system works. Some of the things I really loved to this day and some of the things I've learned how to work with. So that was a really good learning experience early on. And some of the stuff that I've been working on recently within this year, I've had the pleasure of working with Legends, the sportswear company, and I've helped them a couple of different times with Pro Bowl edits. And I actually was on site with they threw a big Super Bowl party. Mm-hmm. So I was on site doing photos, just coverage with that. And it's a great time. Everybody showed up, anybody you can think of, all the athletes. So we had DJ Durrell of the Migos and Quavo, who was actually an investor. He showed up, and then we had Meek Mills perform too. So that was a really fun time. And, just my preferred shoot, I love stuff when you can actually plan stuff out and, hey, we're going to do this in 2 weeks. Hey, we're going to do this in a week. A lot of the time with the music industry, you have 4 hours notice, 3 hours notice, and it's just kind of about just getting stuff done. And that's really one of the superpowers when you can keep your cool and, hey, like, we don't have any time at all. We need you right now to make this work. Sometimes, you got to drop everything and run to kind of really get the job done, Yeah. So when I can actually get something planned out, that's great. And just working with people who care, a lot of people want to get into this industry, and some people care more than others. So I really do appreciate when I do get to work with people that care about what they do.
No, that's a huge, and I think like even meshing, that's a huge plus when we think of, as you mentioned, the early experience of, say, working in the industry or within, the capacity of, say, supporting a young up and coming artist. You get, as you mentioned, to see both the light and dark side, right? Like the things that are, just necessary evil sometimes, whether it's politics, red tape, natural, we keep saying like just human behavior, right? Mm-hmm. People not showing up on time, tech not working, life stuff, and then all the other stuff that are almost unique to, the music industry or being a creative or working with other creatives. So I don't know, I think maybe if you don't mind, like highlight a little bit of where this last Super Bowl event and the beginning of kind of one of your first projects that introduced you to the full facet, right, of a creative and a photographer and working with an artist. What do you see now that you maybe in hindsight, how would I put this, were able to either replicate or still use from like that first experience that worked in something maybe a little bit more professional, more like established now? and vice versa. What about what you see now with, say, like this Super Bowl project and any of the other projects with your agencies and your mainstream artists that maybe is lacking from the beginning kind of up and comer? Is there any of those like things that are like, if you could pick and choose between pros and cons from them, do you know anything that comes to mind as far as like best of both worlds, if that makes sense?
Right. Yeah. And just to clarify, Matt is crazy. He got signed when he was 12.
Oh, wow.
So he blew up off the internet and the power of the internet,
Yeah.
He was just a complete professional, way ahead of his time. It was more or less learning the systems of how the billion-dollar companies work and how sometimes things take longer than others, and you just kind of have to go with the flow sometimes,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've used a lot of that stuff from my first big break with Matt. I really appreciate working with them and just learning so much and being able to carry on the professionalism that I've seen Matt have, and just the day-to-day, how hungry people can be. Like, I've worked with artists for years before that point, and if we were scheduling to shoot a music video, okay, we would shoot a music video. When I was working with him and being hungry and young how it was, we were shoot 3 or 4 in a night.
Wow.
Which is unheard of. But just learning how hungry some people are and how much they care. Like I said, Matt cares. Matt really cares about what he does. And just even to the Super Bowl party, like, everybody at Legends cares. And that's why I believe they're just breaking out, and they care from the quality of the clothes they have, how they fit, who they want to have in them, why they make them. They're performance driven, and they look very chic. They're great. I'm lucky I have a whole bunch in my closet now after working with them, exactly. But it's just how you carry yourself and how far are you willing to go, because this industry is very sought after, being entertainment, and there's always somebody hungry coming up. So it's all about how you handle yourself, how knowledgeable you are, but at the same time, how well you can work under pressure.
So true. And even like backtracking to something you said, and I want to get into it maybe a little bit more focused later, but you mentioned the sort of like scrappiness and being ready, which is pro and con, right? Like, ideally you have the time to formulate and really deliver. And to your point, like, as a professional, as somebody who's doing the work, who's really respects and honors their craft and pays homage to the muse, if you will, and seeing other people that work at that same level of execution, of just love, of a grind, there is this, obviously it's necessary, sometimes the nature of the beast of like the solve the solution in real time. But when you have pros and even projects that are not necessarily just well-funded, but just well-organized or done by people who, like you said, care, it does drive within you that sort of reminder of hunger, right? And also you see how to sustain that, because somebody like your favorite artist, your favorite photographer, your favorite person that has made it, like, they only stay on top if they maintain that hunger, right? And as one of the things that comes up that we're facing right now, I would say the writer's strike, right? Like, there is like also just the economics of how many jobs and how talented are the people there, how much of it is luck, right? Because there is some luck. And like, what is, I guess, your sort of take on the showing up, like the reps that you do, say like a pianist practicing their scales, what sort of reps do you practice daily and kind of maintain that professionalism? So as you make it, as you grow, as we build our businesses and our brands and deliver better projects, how do you maintain that hunger for yourself to know that, one, it's something that feeds the people that you work with, as far as like the energy and the level of collaboration, but also to not get complacent? Is there any thoughts on that, I guess, specific approach?
Yeah, I mean, end of the day, it's just, I'm here to help. My biggest thing, everybody kind of, with wearing so many hats, sometimes it's a little hard introducing, oh, what do you do? And then I just kind of like have a comical response. Oh, I get stuff done. Just kind of like the long story short, whatever, helping with a consultation or a production setup or producing an event or directing a video, editing a video, and I'll kind of reduces down to getting it done. And just with the hunger, it's just, I'm here to help. There's so many people out here, veterans in the industry that need a hand, into the young guys coming up, young girls coming up. And it's just of a constant feed for more. And how do I stay on top of it? Is just honestly just like really observing, my style. What the clients are happy with? How can I make that even better? What kind of content works? What do I see in my Instagram sponsored ads that I'm receiving? Kind of just analyzing that and just analyzing what content is popular. The internet moves so fast anymore. It's not even like a quarterly change. The algorithm could change every 2 weeks. The content, the popular meme of the month, and it just kind of works with what's popular right now, and how can I not completely steal that and make that my own, and how can I, like I said, I'm here to help. How can I make my clients' day easier? Because everybody's busy. Everybody has a million things on their plate, whether they talk about it or not. So that's my biggest value, and my biggest thing that I can tell anybody trying to get in the industry is just make everybody's day as easy as they possibly can. Bring as much value to the plate as you possibly can, and just say please and thank you. Like, people kind of overlook showing up on time, doing what you say you're going to do.
So true.
The littlest stuff, sometimes that's all you need to do.
Yeah, there's a low bar sometimes, especially depending within certain cultures, even regionally. I'm in the South, I'm in Texas, from Vegas. I came out here from Vegas. And the energy of like, just as we've talked about before in previous episodes, like dealing with people on a people to people level, sometimes the bar in your, LA, New York, Vegas, these major cities where things move fast, that person that has that sort of keen eye to not only the professionalism that is expected in just playing with skilled individuals, but also just being a quality, kind human, right? Like, sometimes that is underappreciated, but over the long term, zooming out, it is so valuable. And as you mentioned, I think that value approach is, as any business, as any entrepreneur, as any, I think, leader in any space, bringing value is the point of it, right? And bringing value comes from when it's hard and when it's last minute. But I want to kind of pull the thread on that a little bit, because I think that's one of the most clear things in our interactions and in your work, of just how you think about adding value to your clients, to folks you work with. Is there any thoughts on like leverage for content specifically? So when you're working with a client, and as you mentioned, people are busy, especially if they're professionals, how do you think about leverage for either the work that you're doing or for the work that you're producing for them?
Right. Yeah. I feel like I have a unique experience when I get to work with a client now, because my background visually as a artist, photographer, director, but I've also gotten into the back end side of things as well, with content creation and management and digital marketing. So my brain works both ways. Yeah. So I can make this content, but also work on the rollout as well as I'm shooting the videos. Okay, this kind of content will work really good with this and this and this. We can set this up. We can send this to this guy. We can send this to this network over here, and just kind of use the best of both worlds and the value I can bring my clients. And we've gotten to the point where we realize how valuable social media is. I still think we're not super early on it, but it's to the point now where every major platform's changed how it works over the video content, the long form video. And we know we need it now, but it's just like they almost dread, oh, we need to do all this extra content now. We need to shoot these videos. And it's just either like bringing the value. If they have the time and the resources where they can say, hey, Josh, we need you to come over here. This is what we want for the campaign. This is the atmosphere we're trying to create. And then I can build off that. Cool. If they have a smaller budget for this project and they have the time, I can teach them how to do short form content themselves. Hey, this is some ideas, and just teach them, because the amount of content you really need to do is astronomical anymore. Like, I just read something earlier, the Instagram wants 6 story posts a day, like just on the story, not counting the reels or going live or posts or carousel or, that's just on that one platform. We're not talking about TikTok, YouTube shorts, anything like that. So bringing the value, whatever the situation is, it's not, oh, you don't have a big enough budget for me to come in and create this great content for you. That's how can I help you, and that really kind of builds the relationship and like on the human basis of it. Okay, cool. How can I help you sometimes it just doesn't line up, but if I can make it work anyway, just kind of give to the value, I always try to. Because the worst feeling is when you kind of walk away and it's just like very stale. I never want that to happen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in the phase of recognizing within business, and just, it's so cliche, but it's one of those things where you go into something not expecting something out of it, and that's where a lot of like the magic or the long-term relationship forms. And I think because of that, and again, if you look at ultra successful people, if we're talking measuring by wealth or just maybe even happiness, it's those individuals who are not focused on making just the sale, or I'm trying to get a customer just to get the money in my pocket. Just, obviously there's all the surface level things that you could say, but how you move and how you deliver it, and as you mentioned, show up to help regardless, like whatever you can do because it's in your nature and because you just feel like that's the right thing to do, or you respect this person's craft, or you're just, as you said, trying to be helpful. That's like the long-term play again. And that's the behavior of most of like the ultra successful. So you'll see people who, and I'm not even talking like cutting corners, but just people like, yeah, it's just hustle, get the customer, whatever. And those customers churn, right? And churn costs the business, right? To go out and get new customers. And that's a model, but that model is not really as valuable as the one that's like, let me just get in the door and be of service. And that sort of relationship over an extended period of time, just like a good investment, if you put in something into it and you understand what it quote unquote needs, and you let time compound, and you're, I don't know if the investment would have been the best analogy, but in some aspects, like getting in there and still like nurturing it instead of it just being a one quick transactional situation, which again, we're all in business to some extent. We're all trying to make a profit, right? But the longer profit or the longer win is making the relationship first, then the sale, right?
Right, for sure. I mean, end of the day, this is really what I truly love. Like I said, I came from a background of construction. I was an electrician for 9 years. I had my license and did all that kind of stuff. And I finally made the jump roughly 4 years ago to do this full time when I've been creative my whole life. So it's just like, why wait this long to jump and then work so hard and diligently to build this up just to, oh yeah, well, let me just do this cash grab real quick and let me do this real quick. And, oh, well, this guy knows this guy, so I can use him to get there. And it's just, honestly, end of the day, even if that was something I could do, it just wouldn't sit right with me. Some people, I can't speak for everybody, but I'm really in this for the long game and just, for helping. Like, I get the biggest, like, gain personally when I see, oh, this worked really well for you. I helped them with a just call. Like, I was actually earlier today, I have this very successful musician from Serbia, and she's, top 10 in the charts over there, and she's working on coming over here. I just did a quick consultation call with her, and that's one of the services I provide, I charge for. She was a friend of a friend. I sat on the phone with her for an hour and we just talked. She asked me all these questions and what can I do? And it's just, honestly, people overthink things, like, what do you see online? What are they doing? How can you replicate that with your music? What's going on in the United States compared to your country? And just posting. Like, people want to just have this master movie, like, out for their content. And it's just more or less like a compound, and you got to post every day. You got to post as much as you can. I interviewed this artist. I have a platform as well where I interview artists and I produce my shows. And another way for me to really kind of stay on top of things and learn as well. But it's a good friend we had on the show, and his name's Strayway. He's out of DC. And he mentioned that he made 600 TikTok posts last year.
Jeez.
And that not only helped him be relevant, helped push his music, but it also taught him more about himself. Like, he listened to the comments, he's seen what people were saying. He has this crazy deep voice. He's just a radio voice, and it's his voice. He grew up with it, but he didn't realize, like, oh, this is a valuable thing in my arsenal right now. And he rolled with it, and he's been able to gain millions in streams this year, just so far already. So it's just,
that long game. I mean, even consistency, not just for obviously the customer acquisition or the business model, but the individual, right? Like, we think that, as you mentioned, it's just about this new hack or this new thing. No, there's great knowledge in knowing what the newest thing is and understanding it, but also just like the chopping of wood and carrying of water, right? Like the day-to-day things that we need to do.
Right.
And I think even like back to what you were mentioning earlier, having the sort of the diverse background of both from the content creator mode, like seeing what one produces results, but also like from the man behind the lens mode, that, and even some of the background with, I don't know, electrical work or being a creative your whole life, or like your buddy who, you know, if somebody made 600 episodes or 600 of anything, that sort of meshing of your own individual experience. And I think like we think we're going to post content out there for the sake of, yes, getting views, getting the content pool build up, your billboard, so to speak. But there's all these underlying lessons of what do you learn about yourself? What do you learn that is actually valuable? And you have to be a person that's obviously paying attention, as you alluded to earlier, with the landscape, within yourself. How do you, wearing so many hats and kind of switching from, you know, producer mode to consulting to photography, how do you make sure that you leave enough space or time to, one, productively switch between these hats, and then two, to have the sort of awareness that allows you to reflect, I guess, on what is the underlying lesson or what is the maybe strategic approach? Does that make sense?
For sure. And it's something that definitely just comes with time. We're definitely kind of bringing into this era of like, there's even like, I see jobs pop up for 360 creatives, where usually you were a photographer and you didn't shoot video. And then you were a cinematographer where you just used the camera. It was very specific jobs that will always be there at the top, but we're moving into this content era where it's just like everybody does everything. And it just takes time to kind of really be able to feel things out. I do my best to just be in like a sort of a flow state where I can really amplify specific pieces at a time, when just kind of, okay, I can use a combination of this right here. But if I'm in a role where they just need a photographer, they don't want to hear my 2 cents on this, it's okay, here we go. I'm just going to take the best photo ever and just kind of roll with it. But the most of the time, I'm very thankful that I can use 2 or 3 things at once and really kind of build my value in the situation where it's still not crazy early in this space, but it's still not an everyday thing having so many people be able to do both back end and take the photo and think about the marketing plan as well.
Yeah, that's a massive, definitely value add, because you see it within organizations where those sides clash so much. Like, yes, the creative or marketing wants to do X, Y, Z, and sales and operations is like, well, is this going to work? And so you do, back to the leverage point, offer that sort of shortcut, so to speak, of making it agreeable to both. Also, I think with, as you mentioned, being new to the era that is the algorithm, right? And as you said earlier, it changes every week, every month, sometimes every day. On top of that, we have like the new technology. So if you come in with somebody that can understand both the front end side and then the back of house, right? Relations between the content and the creative. If you have that sort of, I guess, growth mindset and learning capabilities and ability to think dynamically, you can take advantage of these like day-to-day, month-to-month changes, because they're coming. And that's oftentimes why the younger generation is going to be up on, say, the next cultural thing, be it the internet, or back in the day it was rock and roll or radio, or
Right.
like now it's AI, now it's this thing. And in your microcosm of, say, creatives or photography, and niching down photographer slash producer slash, you know, writer, like, you have this ability to, if you are in that sort of state, or in that sort of, again, best word I can describe for it is growth mindset, to build no matter where pretty early on. So even if we're 6 months down the road and you're starting now, or you started 6 years ago and you're here now, as long as you have your ear to what is going on and you're practicing those reps, there's definitely this early stage, and then the early stage is repeating, because there's always new things coming on. Do you know what I mean?
Right, for sure. And it's one of those, like you said, everything changes so often. It's almost funny. Like, you have people calling themselves experts, you know, which with, you know, they have degrees, everything, you know, they're very good at what they do, but it's almost comical at a certain point, because it's just like, okay, well, TikTok just upgraded the algorithm. Instagram doesn't even want to call the algorithm anymore. I forget the phrase they use now, but it's like now everybody is almost starting from scratch because, yeah, you have a background in theory and all this other kind of stuff, but you don't know how it works right now. So
Yeah.
we're all kind of figuring it out and going with the flow together. So it's really just kind of really important. And a thing I got to learn early is once you kind of get stuck in your waves, you're done with how fast everything moves. And even with music, I've been around some older guys very successful in the space, and they're just like, oh, I don't understand this hip hop anymore. It's not hip hop. It's like, yes, it is. It's just you're out of touch when you can't sign anything, you can't make anything hit if you're out of touch. So it's just kind of really kind of going with the flow. Even if some of the stuff I don't personally agree with, it's just like, okay, I don't understand it. Let me do my research. Let me spend the time and figure it out.
Yeah, I think even with as you grow within your space and having that sort of ability to learn, like anybody who gets a degree or, as you mentioned, understands the theory of anything isn't as valuable as the individual who is constantly learning and who is humble enough, because that's the other part is, we're going to age and we're going to maybe get comfortable even as we stay hungry, as we mentioned to earlier. But like, are you going to be humble to be like, well, maybe these new kids are onto something? Or are you just going to be like, well, they don't know what they're talking about. This is crazy in my day. And you stay like that OG that,
Right, but back in the day,
that's OG. Yeah. Exactly. And so that sort of beginner's mindset, that is a hard thing to, especially, again, the earlier on we adapt that ability as a creative or a professional to have that sort of beginner's mode. That's the only way I think that we can continue to just not only stay with our ear to what is going on for the sake of relevance, because that can be its own maybe toxic thing, right? Like the person is just always trying to play the young, cool kid, but just for the sake of service, right? Being aware for the sake of, well, I want to bring my knowledge and help the up-and-comers, and I have something to learn for the up-and-comers. So humility, I think, and again, to sort of go back to the growth mindset are some of the, I think, bigger maybe character, as well as you think about like mindset, skill set, and character as the tripod for growth, like the character aspects that let you stay in tune. And it's almost like it's necessary now as we keep talking about in this like ever-changing world.
For sure.
Now, kind of shifting gears to storytelling, what would you say are maybe some of the important factors that you consider when you want to depict, obviously everything that we understand as humans is through story. How do you think about storytelling through your work?
Through my work, it goes on the project and the client, and whether I'm shooting a music video and it's performance based, and then it's okay, well, how can we, it's all performances, it just has to look cool, but how do we get these colors to blend together? How do we get these outfits? How do we get the transitions between the locations to go together? And just a storyline, how do we tell this story? If we're doing a creative or a company, what are their morals? Where does their integrity stand? How are they trying to bring value? And just kind of help them push it along the way. End of the day, it's just telling their story. Everybody's different. There's so much content out there. It's just like they say our attention span's like 4 seconds now, which is crazy, so you're just swiping away. But how you really be able to stand out with all these trends and all this other kind of stuff is really just, like I said, adapted to yourself, because there's only one of you. You have a very unique story, and just be yourself. And like everybody wants to go viral, and that was kind of the real pushing point for the selling point for TikTok, because it was just, you could have 3 followers and get 300,000 views. Oh, right, it's still crazy. So everybody jumped on there trying to go viral, but if you can just tell your story consistently, you're going to get the growth and the success that you want. Really get your point across. Start with just a small community. Really just focus at the people who are listening to you. Like I said, everybody wants to go viral, but they're even kind of slowing that down, and it's like the dopamine fix. Oh, we keep on posting, and eventually we try and get viral again. But it's really just, if you sit down and you think about what story are you trying to tell? Why are you trying to tell it? Who do you want to listen to your story? And after you think that out and we come up with something together, that's really how you can really build the following, where your account's going to grow, you're going to get the ROI. And at the end of the day, most important thing is you're going to be able to build that community that sticks around with you.
Yeah, I love that idea behind, I forget which book, but Seth Godin was kind of my first introduction to, the man, he's got like a phrase for it that is pretty unique, but it's like your tribe, right? Like you're kind of spinning off of like Kevin Kelly's 1,000 True Fans. Like if you have this sort of way of the posting consistent, it's almost like the last step out of the 5 first steps. And you mentioned those earlier with like niching down, finding your specific audience. And something that I read from the new Rick Rubin book recently, like where we have obviously our own unique self. And he said the Beatles were trying to replicate these American rock and roll artists, but in being authentic to themselves and still using a sort of model, that is how you create a story, right? So to speak. And so those things come to mind of just how we, as you said, being yourself is going to be as cliche as well. The thing that lets you, I think, make it sustainable, right? To communicate a story, and yourself could be like your true brand, your true message, as you said, like your values as a company. But then it's okay to, as they say, steal like an artist, right? Like you are not ever going to be the Beatles, because the Beatles are the Beatles, and even they were replicating something else, but they had enough of the mastery and the professionalism, as well as just the consistency, maybe a version of what would have been virality then. And in today's day and age, like the same thing, the influencer or the brand or the artist that has that sort of true to themselves, they're not reinventing the wheel ever, rarely. Like most of them aren't. They're just going to follow what inspired them, right? And that's what we do, is we continue to inspire and sort of, I say, blend those two of the consistent storytelling of what is your brand and being very aligned, as you said, to your truth, and being okay, being inspired and kind of drawing, examples from some of your favorites, because that is why they're our favorites. Instead of just putting something or somebody on a pedestal, why not take the things that we admire, right? If you see it, you got it type of thing, then act on it. I think that's where we see some of the best creatives and just pathways towards growth and success professionally and individually.
For sure.
Now, we'll finish off with this question on metrics, maybe not necessarily like specific analytics metrics, but in general, what metrics do you use for the success of your client experience, the stakeholders maybe on a project, and maybe the audience? Sometimes those can all be the same. Sometimes those are different. What are your favorite metrics to kind of track success?
Right. I mean, end of the day, you always love looking at the fat ROI or the account growth or the subscribers tripling. But like we just talked about, did you get the point you're trying to get across? That's something I really focus on, because like the ROI is very important, and growing the account and making sure you're getting the reach is always like the name of the game anymore. Those are the two most important things in which you hear people talking about often. But with how I look at things, you really need to build that base and keep on telling your story for the branding. It's for the long-term game, is just building your brand, which I say that takes about like 10 years or so to really build a strong brand. And day by day, what colors do we like to use? What atmosphere, what vibes do we want to get across with this clothing line, with these shoes, with the song, with this album? What are we doing? And just building brick by brick. And when you have a strong base, that wall's going to be straight. It's going to last for 30 years. And that's the main thing I try and do. I try not to do too much grabby stuff. If we need to, for the longer goal, okay, cool. Let's build the audience real quick. Let's use all these cheesy growth hacks that work. They look a certain way, but they work, But just really building the base and getting that story across. Because once you really have people like locked in, you have to do something pretty crazy to have them go away. And if you can just keep continuing, like compound on just like locking people in with your story and your values and what you're trying to get across with your product, it may take a little bit longer, but it's just going to be well worth it.
I love that. So I'm going to run those back, just kind of the takeaways that I got, and then just fill in anything that, you think I'm missing. So starting from that is the consistency of telling your story and tracking the success of it based on not just ROI that, yes, as a business we need, but more on, is this building a firm foundation? And so maybe keeping that as a sort of success metric. Then I think the next one would be giving the time some time, right? So as you continue on this path, like letting time do its thing and compound, both for you to improve as well as for your projects, your business, your brand. Also paying attention and studying the space. So being aware of the landscape and being a student to it, both with humility as well as with just that interest, in order to, I think my favorite point so far is just being here of service, being here to help. Because as we know, if you show up with that attitude, like people feel it. And a lot of, I think, the immature way of thinking of, oh, am I going to be taken advantage of, or am I going to seem weak, or whatever goes on in our minds sometimes, especially in like competitive games that these can be. Being here to help is always like the surefire win, because it builds on all those other things, the consistency, the showing up. And then lastly, I love how we began this with just talking about working with professional and being a professional. That sort of, again, sacrifice and respect is the best word I can think of for the craft, for the people in it, for the ones that show up every day, for yourself to show up every day, are some of the most, again, character building skill set in and of its own. So this has been great, man. Anything else on talking points, takeaway that I missed here?
No, you caught everything. It's really just all comes down to treating people how you want to be treated. When I have to hire out or when I need help with a project, I want someone to really care about it and go above and beyond because they want to see it be successful, just like I do when people come in and they hire me. So it's really just kind of circles back down to treating people how you want to be treated and doing what you say you're going to do. You know, it's really that simple. People overcomplicate. As humans, we always, we need to do this and we need to do that. And we break everything down crazy. It's just show up, be polite, and do what you say you're going to do.
Yeah. And I mean, you said it earlier with your console, this artist from overseas, anytime that even ourselves, that we could be the best at our craft, we could be very good at it, but having this sort of counsel, this sort of mirror is sometimes very important for that same reason. Is we could give advice to somebody that we're going to complicate for ourselves. We'll create a story for it, but having this sort of maybe unattached or other professional, just having another set of eyes, another set of ears, that's been very, very valuable and an ongoing trend as far as conversation with past guests. So I'm glad you brought that up. And then to wrap up, man, let me know, where can people support you, find out more, plug in anything you got going on?
My main platform is Instagram. My Instagram is JoshX302, Delaware zip code, where I'm from. That's the easiest place. I'm on there all the time. Have any questions, just shoot me a message, and always happy to help. And then my company is While You're Sleeping. We have a YouTube channel we're building with, like I said, the shows we're producing. So we're over there. So those are two best places.
Love it, brother. Well, thank you so much. Looking forward to our next chat, and appreciate you jumping on.
Sure. Thank you for having me.